Thank you. Is there anybody who wasn't here last time? Okay, so what I threw in here real quickly, I'm just going to review real quickly what we went through last time, just so you have an idea of where we started. But I went through the potential factors that explain the diversity of the Pine Valley Mountains plant flora, because there are 1,110 species in the Pine Valley Mountains and surrounding area, and that's about 39% of the plants that are in the entire state of Utah in a very small mountain range in the very southwest corner of the state. So it's pretty bizarre to have that kind of diversity in a very small range. And so we looked at the location, where we sit, the geography, the fact that we're sitting at the conflux of the Great Basin, the Colorado Plateau, and the Mojave Desert. All of those are converging right here. And then the elevation range, obviously from about 3,000 to over 10,000 feet. The ecogeographic regions that I just mentioned, climatic patterns, what kind, we're in a desert, so that has an effect. And as you go up in elevation, you get more and more precipitation. And then of course, the geology here, that there is no other geology on the planet like there is in southern Utah, northern Arizona. So we looked at all the different layers that make up what are the Pine Valley Mountains. And then the fact that we've got preservation areas here that keep some of this stuff pristine. And then we started into the plant diversity, and there are, plants are broken down into a couple of different groups. First, we have the non-vascular plants, which is the mosses, and then we have some seedless vascular plants that are horsetails and a few things we looked at last time. And then we looked at first of all, the gymnosperms. That's all the pines, spruces, firs, ginkgo, and ephedras, the Mormon teas, Brigham teas, that kind of stuff. And then we got into the flowering plants, and we got through the monocots, which is all the grasses and grass-like plants. And so that leaves us with the dicots, and there's about 100 picture slides left to go. So I calculated last night when I finished up really late at night getting this done that I got about 4 slides per minute to get through. So they're mostly pictures, so there will be some yakking about them, but I want you to be impressed with the diversity of the flora that we have right here that I don't think anybody would expect in the desert, but it's there. Oh yeah. Okay. So for those who weren't here last time, this is a list that I can't let you keep, but if you want to follow along with the plants that we're looking at, there is a list of what I'm going through. I only post the families up here. So as we're going through the families, you can see what's in there. And I put the scientific names on the left, the common names on the right, if you're more familiar with those. And this all comes out of a Utah Flora, which is a big, thick book that has all the plants of Utah in it, and Intermountain Flora, which covers a wider range area that is most of Nevada, parts of California, Oregon, Idaho, and Nevada and Utah. So that's what the two sources are for the information that I'm giving. So if you'll go to page, yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah, so on the top of page 9 is where we're going to pick up from, and that is the angiosperm dicots. So the monocots are the grass-like plants that are flowering. This is everything else, okay?
Does that literally mean one leaf, two leaf, monocot, dicot?
Monocotyledon is like when a peanut breaks into two pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the two cotyledons.
Yeah, okay.
So those are the dicots. Monocots are like corn. There's only one piece. Okay, so the dicots have two cotyledons. The floral whorls, the petals, the sepals, the stamens, all of that stuff is in either groups of 4 or groups of 5. So it'll have 4 petals, 8 petals, or 5 petals, 10 petals. Leafination is net-like. Unlike monocots, all the leaves are long with parallel veins in them. These have net-like veins. If you look at the back of a maple leaf, you see that the veins are branching all over. They have tap roots, so they don't have the little fibrous roots you see on an onion. They've got a big tap root like a carrot, or multiple tap roots like a carrot. And the vascular bundles are the veins. If you cut a dicot stem cross-section and you look down at all the veins run around the outside of the stem. They're not in the middle, they're just around the outside. And pollen grains are all 3 furrowed versus monocots we saw last time, which are 1 furrowed. So monocots, pollen grains have a single furrow in them or 1 pore. These have a furrow in 3 places all the way around. And wood formation here is common, whereas in monocots, there is no wood. There's a few woody things like yuccas and bamboo and stuff like that, but it's not true wood. So this is where you find most of the true wood outside of the gymnosperms, which are all the pine, spruces, firs, those things. So this is a much bigger group. Most of the species are in this group. So we're going to look at here. So here's your 3 furrows. So there's 3 furrows around that pollen grain, like a bean or a peanut. They break into 2 pieces. This particular flower has 5 petals. And then you have the net vein leaves and the vascular bundles in a circle, and then tap roots. So those are the things that distinguish dicots away from the monocots we looked at last time. So Acer ace, this is the family that includes all the maples and box elders. So we have a couple of different ones up there you can see on the list if you're following along, which we have, and Acer grandidentatum is the big one, the one that's pretty that everybody goes to see the fall colors. So maples are in abundance there. Amaranth ace, a lot of these are weedy species. Okay, they are native to the Pine Valleys, but lots of weedy species. This family has been intermingled with another family called Chenopodiaceae that includes all the salt brushes, and beets are in there and things like that. So there's a lot of this family that's been turned into garden plants that are big and frilly. They're not less frilly like our native plants tend to be. Anacardiaceae, this is a very interesting family. We got pistachios up in the Pine Valleys, not native. Obviously, those have been planted. Rhus is the family that is now called skunk bush. So if you've seen skunk bush, if you take a leaf from skunk bush, you smell it, it's pretty potent. And then we have toxicodendron, which is poison oak. So all of those are here, but you have in this family, you have pistachios, mangoes, poison oak, and a bunch of other things that just seems bizarre that they would all be in the same family. So here you have pistachios and mangoes along with something that's poisonous. And by the way, on these, if you look at these leaves, that's 1 leaf. There are 3 parts to it. It's a divided leaf, so if you want to remember when you're up there, leaflets 3, leave it be. Berries white, poison site. It's just something to remember. As a kid in Southern California, I walked through the hills. I don't know how many times I walked right through the middle of poison oak and turned around and went, oops, and then never got it. So I didn't have a problem. My next door neighbor, one of my friends, we had a fire down the back hill and he swelled up and couldn't breathe. And so it just depends on what your genetics are as to how potent that is for you. But we do have it here. It's just not in that great of abundance. Okay?
So there's definitely poison oak in the Pine Valleys.
Yes. It's just not that abundant. Not like if you're in the coastal hills of California where it's everywhere. Apiaceae or umbelliferae is the carrot family. So we do have a bunch of different things that are in there, including poison hemlock. So in the carrot family, you've got all of the cilantro and parsley and lots of things that you eat, plus a bunch of things that you don't eat, and conium. So you can tell poison hemlock by the branches looking like that. All of these have those kinds of flowers. It's called an umbel, same root word as umbrella. So they have a compound umbel. So not only do they have what looks like an umbrella, but each little piece on it looks like an umbrella. Okay? And there are many things in this family, so if I give you more than one slide in a family, that's because there's a ton of things in that family. So some of these are just things that you might or might not recognize. They're not famous for anything. Apocynaceae is another interesting group. Some of these are weedy species that we've planted places and they've escaped, and now they're other places. Periwinkle. And then we've got some native stuff. Some of these are poison. Some not so deadly poison, but would at least make you wish you hadn't eaten it. Asclepiadaceae, probably the most complex flower of any plant on the planet. So you can look at this thing, they have this big corona, and they have a horn sticking out of it, and the male and female parts are all fused together, and so it's really bizarre, but this is all the Asclepias. You recognize that from any medical doctors in here? Nobody?
What's that?
Medical doctors? When they have to take the oath,
Okay, gotcha.
that's the same root word as that. But when you look at this family, all these this family is very important for monarch butterfly reproduction. So they use these plants quite a bit to be able to congregate around during reproductive times. Asteraceae, this is the largest plant family on the planet, okay? Anything that's daisy, sunflower, anything like that is in this family. And there are about 25,000 species in this family. And so it is one of the bigger families in the Pine Valley Mountains, as you can see from your list. But there's a bunch of stuff you may not know here, but take a look at some of these. You'll notice they all look daisy-like or dandelion-like.
Is that sand Artemisia?
Artemisia, there's sand sage, there's big sage, it's sagebrush.
Yeah.
Not the same as sage.
No,
The sagebrush is.
Big grayish blue.
Right, but there's a distinction between what are true sages and what are sagebrushes.
Right.
And sand sagebrush and big sagebrush are in this family,
Yes.
not with the sages.
Yes.
So the interesting thing about this family that most people don't understand is that that is not a flower, okay? Every one of these, what you call a petal, and every one of these separate things is a separate flower with all the reproductive parts. So it's called the composite family because the whole head is made of multiple flowers. So when you're going, she loves me not, she loves me not, you're picking off entire flowers, not petals, okay? So they have also produced, there's some there, but let me find another. So all the artichokes and the thistles and the rabbit brushes. Oops, I didn't mean that to happen. Trying to find, anyway, you've all seen dandelions, this thing, okay? Probably the reason it's the largest family is because evolutionarily that's been the most successful way to propagate, right? Because the minute they produce that, it's a whole head full of different fruits that have a parachute attached to them. The wind comes along and scatters them everywhere, okay? So it's probably the reason why they've been so successful is that. Lactusa is the same genus that lettuce is in. Plukia, I don't know if you've seen arrowweed. It's usually down at lower elevations near water, like up Red Cliffs and places like that. Anywhere there's water, you'll find that. It is believed that the Native Americans used it for arrows because the stems are really straight. It only gets about 6 or 8 feet tall, but the stems are really straight, and if you clean them off, you have a nice straight stick.
Is that which one is that,
The Plukia, yes. Anytime I tell you something about Native Americans, I'm not one, so I don't really know. I'm just telling you what I've heard. I don't know that I have verification for a lot of that. It would be nice if we did, but these are things that I've been told. Taraxacum is the good old-fashioned dandelion, so if you've seen those, I've also been told that the Italians brought those over for food, and now they're everywhere. Okay, it is edible. Desert tortoises love the flowers. They shouldn't be anywhere near where desert tortoises live. They're invasive, but desert tortoises love them, and so they are edible if you have dandelions and you don't want to tear them out, eat them. You can eat them, yeah, it's kind of fuzzy. It's like eating a cotton ball.
I mean, personally,
They grow in the Pine Valleys, but they may not grow like this. When they put out, I guess they put out a flower looking just like that, right?
Yeah, these are every photo I have collected is a species that is in the Pine Valleys and looks like that.
Okay.
So, yeah. So they're all up there.
I want GPS coordinates on each one of these.
Yeah, thanks. I haven't seen them all up there. The other problem is if you want to see all of this stuff that I'm showing you, you can't just go on a hike this spring. You would have to be hiking the entire spring and go everywhere to see all of these. So this is a lifelong event if you want to go see every species in the Pine Valleys at every elevation. So. All right, the next family is Berberidaceae, and so this is where we have all the mahonias, the barberries. So we have Fremont barberry, we have creeping barberry, not creepy barberry, creeping barberry. But these are all beautiful. They really have a huge fragrance. If you drive around anywhere where these are popping out at the time, you can smell them. And it's a really pretty smell, but it's potent enough it might gag you. Betulaceae, so this is all the birches and alders. So we do have one birch and one alder up here. River birch is the more common one. It's always near the water. Has a really interesting looking smooth bark. And I've tried to put where I can any of these reproductive structures in. You can see the birches are very cone-like. They're not cones, but they're cone-like. And so evolutionarily, when we look at the genetics, they're way back near the conifers, back at the beginning of the evolution of these kinds of plants. So they're evolving away from the cone-like structure toward flowers. Bignoniaceae, this we have one species here, Chelopsis. It's called desert willow, but it is not a willow by any stretch. Okay, this is the problem with common names. Somebody who wanted to name it something could name it, and they do have leaves that look a little bit willow-like, but willows don't produce flowers anything like that. Okay, we'll see willow flowers later. So this is what we call desert willow, and we do have it all over here. The ones that you see planted in town are typically a hybrid between that and catalpa, so they're not really a true native species. And they try and hybridize them so they don't produce the fruit, which is very messy. You can see all this stuff that comes on the fruit. So if they don't produce the fruit, then they don't make a big mess. So they hybridize them for people to put in their yards, but they're not the true native species.
Trees in that family?
Catalpa is the cross between catalpa and Chelopsis.
It's this terrible leaf virus here in St. George.
Does it? I haven't seen it.
I've heard it's notorious.
Maybe they don't like the hybrid. Boraginaceae, this is a little, mostly tiny little things. Some of the flowers on them are minuscule, very hard to see, so these are close-ups, but it's very common. Lots of different species, but really tiny things. So when you're walking around, they all look furry, like they're covered in hair. It's not hair, but it looks like hair. And so we've got some of these things that are a little bit bigger in the same family. These are really pretty, but they're up at high elevations. It's hard to find them if you're not wandering around up there. But again, even the flowers on those are only that big. So you have to get close up to them to see them, but not a lot of families produce multicolored flowers on the same stem. Mertensia is pretty common up at high elevations. You'll see that quite a bit. Brassicaceae, so this is the family that includes all that nasty stuff like broccoli that humans shouldn't eat. No, that's rabbit food. No, I can't do broccoli. I'm sorry. If you're a broccoli fan, have at it, because you can have all of mine. I would eat Brussels sprouts before I'd eat broccoli. So there's lots of things in this family, but it's the same family as Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, broccolini, lots of stuff. Okay, so there's plenty of pretty flowers. They're not very big. They're smaller, but
Doesn't look anything like broccoli.
well, we took a weed, and that weed is where broccoli and all that other stuff came from.
Yeah.
One plant
Yeah.
has been hybridized into all these other different species. So you can see some of these, you might recognize some of these. Shepherd's purse is a nasty weed.
So by hybridizing them, it's man-made, man tampered
Yeah.
with it and created
Oh, yeah.
all these?
Not these,
Oh, okay.
the ones you eat.
Okay.
These are all native.
Yeah,
The ones you eat, those are the ones that have been tampered with. That's a good word,
yes.
because we tamper with a lot of things.
Yeah.
So some of these end up being weeds as well, because it's really hard to define what a weed is. So I've always defined weed as anything where you don't want it to grow,
In the eye of the beholder.
right? Like your brothers and sisters, they're weeds and things like that. Next door neighbors are weeds, yeah, definitely. So, see, there's a lot of pretty things here, but they're not real big and showy. These are all the pepper grasses, Lepidium. If you see these little fruits right here, they're little tiny things, most of them. There's a few bigger shrubby ones, but little tiny things. If you chew on one of those little fruits, it tastes like black pepper. So they don't have anything to do with black pepper, but they taste like it. So you can see some of the interesting pods that are in this family. So
What's in the lower right-hand corner?
Cocymbrium, that's Cocymbrium
I
ireo.
think that's that plant I showed you last week. That I thought was a weed in my backyard.
Yeah, you'll have to bring it to me. Those are weeds, by the way.
I'll
They're-
show it to you.
Yeah, there's plenty of weeds in this family, no doubt.
That's the plant.
So one of the things that's interesting here is that a lot of people don't see this kind of stuff because they're about that big around, right? They come on an entire stem, but they're little tiny things, and if you don't stop and look at this stuff, you're not going to see it. And there's some really pretty stuff that's down here, that's not this, right? That doesn't just blow up and say, here I am. So there's a lot of things you miss if you don't look, and this is one of the things that I always, have a problem. I think I may have mentioned this last week, but I have a problem with several people around me that like to hike, right? And their version of hike is going from point A to point B as fast as you could possibly get there. That's not what I do. I wander. So I wander, I stop, I take pictures, I look at little small things. I'm on the ground on my hands and knees checking things out, because to me, that's what I want to be out there for. If I can exercise, I can go run around a track and do that.
It's not the destination, it's the journey.
Yes. So that's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. My wife is a hiking fool, so. Cactaceae, there's a bunch of these up there. This is another one that doesn't get appreciated for its flowers because of its thorns, right? And these, they're nasty to play with, but if you want to stand back and look at pretty flowers, this is a family you should stand back and look at. And you'll notice also this is one that puts out the big showy, here I am. It also puts out the, I'm going to get you if you come too close, right?
The quality of the color in some of the cactus is amazing. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, the vividness of the color
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the vividness because it's vivid color or because they're just so big. But anything that has evolved with color like that is after some pollinator. So the pollinators are most interested, so when you find color, it's probably because evolutionarily pollinators have visited the ones that were most vivid to them. And in the process, the ones that are most vivid get to reproduce, and so they continue to reproduce more vivid color through time. So that would be my best explanation for that. So there's a bunch of cacti up there, so I put a bunch of stuff in. I also have edible fruit, but you got to take the chance of being stabbed or have the little glochids in your fingers. By the way, if you ever get the little tiny ones that are down at the base in you, the best cure for that, duct tape. Use duct tape. If you get them in your fingers, you'll feel them, and it'll trigger a nerve. Get a big slab of duct tape and slap it on there and rip it off. That's the best thing I've ever found. It's not perfect, but it's better than anything else I've found. Calitrichaceae, this is a family that only grows in the water, so since we don't have a ton of water up in the Pine Valleys, we have a few swampy areas up on top, and then obviously the man-made lake. So we do have a few of these floating around in the water. Oops, that was too fast.
Oh,
I missed that one.
oh, I saw that.
Come on. All right, so this is Campanulaceae, and campanule in Latin means bell. So a lot of these flowers look like bells. So they just hang down like a bell, so that's where the name came from. There are lots of these up there. Not a ton of species, but there's a lot of individuals. And then some of your favorite family, maybe, I don't know. Not mine. But we do have hops and we do have marijuana growing up there. Not by itself. It's been helped. And I put the middle picture up there because the middle kid was a student of mine clear back, I don't know, 30 plus years ago. And he walked into my class the first day of class, and it was a plant class, and he walks in with his head down like this, and I said, "What's the matter?" And he says, "I don't want to take this stupid class." I said, "What, you don't want to take a plant class?" "No, plants are dumb. I like animals." So we got through my class. I was at a junior college at the time, and he went to the neighboring four-year college. 2 years later, after he left, he comes back to my office, walks in like this again, and I said, "What's going on?" He says, "I don't want to tell you." And I said, "What do you mean you don't want to tell me?" He says, "You're right." I said, "What do you mean I'm right?" He says, "Plants are better than animals." He got his degree in plants, and his first job with the California State Parks was to go into that forest in the redwoods and hack down all of that and burn it. And I said, "Yeah, I'll bet you burned it." So to hang around to see what happened. So it was pretty funny, but it's one of my few conversions in my life right there.
It's growing in Pine Valley?
Oh yeah,
Is it just natural?
they're not going to tell you where it is.
No, no, no.
Oh yeah, anybody who plants it up there, it's going to naturalize on its own.
I mean, they're not like a farm up there, are they? They're not farming it.
Well, illegal farms.
Really?
Yeah.
Talking about hiking.
I mean, I came from San Jose, California.
Yeah, if you get shot at while you're hiking around, you know where you're at. So Caparaceae, this is the caper family. So we do have Cleoma bee plant. We have a yellow and a purple version of bee plant up there. It's really pretty. I don't know if I'm moving close. I'm way behind, aren't I? Caprifoliaceae, so here's all your elderberries and twinberries and honeysuckles and snowberries, a bunch of that stuff, mostly up mid to high elevation. Yes.
So all this more visible, obviously, like in the springtime?
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, if you want to go up there in the snow and look for it,
No,
You
I'm
can't-
trying to get those flowers.
yeah, you only have a couple of months at the high elevations to look for this stuff.
And some of them are fall time and post monsoon.
We do have a few fall flowering plants. Most of them are in that composite with the dandelions and the rabbit brushes and the sagebrushes. Those, yeah. So I'm gonna have to move through these a little faster. I apologize. It was my fault we started late. Celestraces, the boxwood group, we do have Pachystoma up there. Chenopodiaceae, this is the other one I told you about that's linked to losing my mind trying to think ahead. The other family we just talked about has beets and stuff in it. That's been divided up lately with this one. And so this is where you find the four-winged saltbush and hop sage and a few other things that grow around here. A lot of natives and again, a lot of weeds. Crassionicovia lanata is probably one of my favorite names. I don't know why, I just think it's cool because nobody can say it and I can. So, Crassionicovia. Crassionicovia. N-inicovia. So that's a Russian name, so a Russian named that one. And it puts up these big poofy, white, cottony masses on it. It's called winter fat. Cattle, deer, lots of things love it.
So did that Russian discover that's why?
Yes. Yeah, tumbleweeds in there too. Convolvulaceae, tumbleweeds are an interesting thing. You'll notice they have a really weak stem. And well, apparently that's the way they evolved with that weak stem because they have all the seeds and flowers on them and the wind blows and that breaks off and they tumble around distributing their seeds everywhere. That's why they're everywhere. And then you've seen these guys. There are a few of these that are just escaped and a lot of weeds. If you've had bindweed or any of those, they're beautiful, but you don't want them. Yes. This is the dogwood family. So we do have a dogwood up there. Yeah. Well, a dogwood species. Crassulaceae, this one is a lot of the thicker leaved succulent type of things, the Dudleyias and some of those. Really pretty, but again, mostly small. Crossomataceae, we just have one species of glossopetalon. It's not common. A lot of people don't know what it is, wouldn't recognize it if they saw it. Cucurbitaceae, so this family with all the melons. Okay. So all the melons, pumpkins, cucumbers, all of that stuff. We do have escaped members of these up there. We do have this little tiny melon that grows native here, but all of those are in there. Coyote melon, yeah.
Yep, I have those naturalized in my bag.
There is one native small melon, yes. Cuscataceae, these are called the daughters. If you've seen these, they look like orange silly string all over a plant. They are parasitic. They cannot live on their own because they don't have any chlorophyll. They tap into a plant and take the food from the plant. They do have the ability to collect sunlight. They just don't have the ability to do anything with it. They will eventually kill the plant, yeah, it's parasitic. Elaeagnaceae, they're Russian olive. It's another escaped nasty plant that's up there. So, you know, if it's escaped and nasty, we always call it some name, you know, call it Russian this or Chinese that or whatever. Act like it's their fault that, you know, we brought it over here. So we're the reason it's here, but Russian olive is very terrible invasive species around water. Elatinaceae, there's only one species there. It's a little tiny thing. You'd have to be on the ground with a magnifying glass to see it. Ericaceae, so this is some of your manzanitas and things like that. Arctos, by the way, means bear, and staph means in bunches like grapes. So the name means bear grapes. We actually have a smart aleck like me in Utah who named one of these. In animals, you can name a scientific name using the same name twice. Like the bison, North American bison is bison bison. And the striped skunk is Mephitis mephitis. In plants, that's against the rules. So you can use Latin and you can use Greek. So Arctostaphylos is Greek, so there's a guy in Utah that named one of the plants here Arctostaphylos uva ursi. Uva means grape, ursi means bear, so it means bear grapes, but he used two different languages, so he got away with it. I'm all for that kind of stuff. Euphorbiaceae, lots of poison things here. Ricin is in this family. That's the most deadly poison on the planet, drop for drop. And we have rattlesnake weed. Again, these are little tiny things that grow on the ground and they don't even mound. They're just flat on the ground. They're tiny. We don't have a whole lot of them. This croton here maybe gets about that big.
They're all very poisonous?
They all have some level of that in them. They're not all deadly poison, but they do have some level of that in there. And most of these you aren't going to eat, so it's not going to be a problem. It's not going to be a problem if you touch it. Just don't eat it. Fabaceae. So this is the bean, pea, pulse family. So anything that looks like that. There are multiple astragalus up there, and Stan Welsh, the guy that did Utah Flora, is what we call a splitter. So in biology we have lumpers and splitters, people who just look at it and go, yeah, let's call them all the same and just chalk it up to genetic diversity. And then you have guys like Stan Welsh who split everything off they can possibly split off so they can name a new thing. He was my major advisor, and that's the way he was. So he's a big astragalus guy, so there's a lot of those. And then all the dahlias, and then red buds we have around the water at lower elevations. Gladitia with all those spikes. I've sat and watched birds fly in and out of this stuff. I don't know how they don't impale themselves. They'll literally fly in at full speed and find a place to go in between. I don't know how they do it.
They've been there before, remember?
Apparently. Glycyrrhiza is licorice. Lupines, we have a bunch of those. It is spelled Lupine, correct? And the word for the big trees on the top of the mountain is Pine, and we call those pine trees, correct? We don't call them pin trees. So I don't know where lupin came from. Lupine. Okay, it's spelled the same as pine. These are all still in the bean, pea, pulse family. Yeah, indigo bush is common here. All the mesquites, clovers, things we call clover. Fagaceae is the oak family. We have 2 oaks here. And that would be the Gamble's oak up at higher elevations and scrub oak at the lower elevations. So this is Gamble's oak, this is scrub oak. We also have hybrids of these all over the mountains, natural hybrids. And there's some really funky looking leaves on these that are hybrids. And we have little spiny leaves on these guys, and we have these big lobed leaves on these guys, and these leaves are probably about that big, and those over there are about that big. So we get every combination of size and shape and points and rounded, and it's really bizarre when you see these hybrids. Fumariaceae, there's only one species of Cordalis up there. Garryaceae, this is a fun one. My students always refer to it as Gary. Just refer to it as Gary because Garryaceae and the genus is Garrya. This one, I always make them taste. I make them break the leaf, snap it in half, and break it up a little bit, and then stick it on their tongue. It is one of the most bitter things you will ever taste in your entire life. So, hey, that's part of the teaching job, right? Every sense needs to be used because at the end of the semester, they're going to be asked, what plant is that? And they're going to have to give me all the information. And there's a verifying factor right there. Yep, that sucks. It's got to be Gary. Gentianaceae, there's a few of these up there. Pretty stuff. Again, not real big. Those flowers are maybe that wide. Sorry I'm blowing through some of these. I'm running out of time as we speak. Geraniums, we do have these native geraniums. We do have erodium. This is an invasive species, but cattle love it. So it is never going to stop being moved around. And is very healthy for them, and desert tortoises love it. So It's not supposed to be there, but there's a lot of things that eat it, full of protein. Haloragaceae, there's only one species. Again, it's a water species, so we don't have a whole lot of standing water in the Pine Valleys except for the lake. We do have a couple of swampy areas up on top, but those are frozen most of the year. Hydrophalaceae, so if you like phacelias or yerba santa, those are in this family. Lots of pretty flowers here. They're pretty. Most people think they stink. They do have a smell. It doesn't bother me, but some of my students complain about it.
Some of them are, they're like but they're like rock pebble. You touch the stem of them.
Yeah, some people have a reaction to it, but it's not bad. It's a rash, potential rash. But I've seen very few people that
Okay.
have. My students collect it all the time, and I don't see that very often.
That's good to know.
There are a bunch of phacelias, these little tiny ones.
The leaves look fuzzy.
Some of them are, yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Juglandaceae, this is the walnut, pecan, hickory family. We definitely have the black walnut up there, and we definitely have pecans because we planted those all over here. So those are up in there. Cremeriaceae, so this is the range Ratney group. We've only got one species, but when it flowers, it's a bush that's about that big. It just explodes. And it's beautiful when it goes to flower. Lamiaceae is the mint family, so this is what we were mentioning earlier. This is the family that has the true sages in it. So lots of spices in this family. You can pretty much pick any leaf on any mint and smell it, and you're going to smell something minty. Okay? So all of these have those fragrances, and there are a bunch of them. Salvia is the true sages, and we have a bunch of those. Salvia dorii is flowering right now. Pretty stuff. Monardella, this stuff is an escaped invasive. They use that in florists. They'll put it into bouquets and stuff, but it's escaped, and it's nasty. It's full of thorns. Linaceae, this is the flax family. This is where the word linen came from. And so the original fibers for linens were from this family. We've altered all of that stuff now, but this is where it started. Loasaceae, this is a beautiful family, the blazing star family. We have quite a few different species, also called stickseed. If you touch this stuff, it feels like sandpaper. So it's sandy paper enough that it might, if you have the wrong shirt on, it might cause some disruption of the fiber.
Leaves
So
petals or
stems and leaves. Lythraceae, only have one of these. Malvaceae, this is the hibiscus family. All the globe mallows, checker mallows, cotton, all of those things are in this family. We don't have cotton here, but not in the Pine Valleys. It used to grow here, but all of these beautiful flowers, they all look like, even our little Soralces, all the globe mallows, if you look at them, they look like little tiny hibiscuses. So I grew up a surf rat, so I've always worn the shirts with hibiscus on them, so it's always been one of my favorites. Monotropaceae, this is a family that is parasitic on other things. You'll notice there's no green to them at all. So they don't do photosynthesis. They live on the forest floor, and they attach themselves to roots. See this one sticking up in the snow over here?
So those are the snowflowers.
Some of them, yes. There's a lot of few different things named snowflower.
Yes, that's its generic name.
Moraceae, so this includes the mulberries and figs and things like that. We do have both of those as escapees in the Pine Valleys. Nyctaginaceae, So this family is pretty popular at the lower elevations. So you'll see these down at the low elevations where it starts to get sandy. But we have quite a few of those. Some of these are up in the rocky, little higher elevations. Oleaceae, this is the olive family, and we do have a couple of species of ash and one of Mendora. So we've got the single leaf ash and we've got the Arizona ash, what most people call it velvet ash. It has a couple of different names, but we have both of those. Velvet ash right now in Zion's having a big problem with some pest, and we're hoping that it doesn't spread. But most of those trees in the Zion Canyon campground are big ashes. And if this thing spreads, it might kill them all. And so the campgrounds would be like the rest of the desert. No shade. Onagraceae, it's the 4 o'clock family. So we have Callilophus and Camasonia, quite a few of those, mostly lower elevations. And then we have Epilobium, which is up at higher elevations, sometimes called fireweed. And then Garas and Geophytums, mid-elevation stuff. Enotheras we have all over low to mid-elevations. So there's a bunch of these, and they're one that the plant's only about that big around, but it puts flowers on that are sometimes that big. So it's pretty showy.
So is this just dune primrose, or is it all the primrose family?
All of it. There's some in the dunes, and there's, as you go up in elevation, there's,
Primrose, that's about, what, 700 subspecies or something?
yeah, it's pretty good size. Zosneria,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
Where do they go? High?
Anywhere from kind of top of the low to mid elevation. Orobanchaceae, this is another family that's purely parasitic on other plants. And some of them are poison, but it doesn't look like anything you would want to eat. Some of them are referred to as cone flowers, if you've heard of those. Papaveraceae, this is the poppy family. So we have lots of different poppies. Some of these, I don't know if you've seen these before, but I have to use my gloves to collect those to bring into class because they're covered in spikes and nasty spikes. But we have all of these species up there. These are called cream cups. They're smaller, but they're really pretty. Pedaliaceae, only got one species, if you've heard of devil's claw. So they produce this little fruit that has two curled, looks like a devil's claw, apparently. I don't know what the devil looks like, but apparently somebody does, and they named it after him. So there you go. Plantagenaceae, this is the plantain family, not plantain as in banana, but plantain as in these little tiny things that most of these, again, are really small. There's a few of them that get, maybe this big, and they'll be weedy in your lawn, but they grow all through the mountains. Polemoniaceae, beautiful stuff. Again, mostly small, but lots of beautiful plants there. Gilias, these are really tiny flowers, but when you look at them up close, they're incredibly beautiful. Where am I at time-wise? Am I way over?
So if we're up there hiking, can we find seeds to take home and try to grow, or?
If you're there at the right time,
What's the deal, yeah?
yeah, you just have to be there when they're already at seed and dry.
Plant it all,
But you're still going to have to put them in the freezer for a while. You're going to have to scuff them up with sandpaper. You're going to have to beat them up a little bit before they'll grow.
plant themselves, if we find one, we can dig it up and transplant it.
Native plants don't transplant very well. You can try it, but it's not a great idea. It doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
All of these are pretty, but little tiny things. If you don't stop and look, you're never going to see them. Phloxes are about as showy as they get. We have Phlox australmontana that's all over the foothills. If you go up to where the kiln is, up the canyon, I see it there quite a bit. And it'll grow in these little mounds about, maybe that high, covered, just completely covered in flowers. Polygonaceae, this is all the buckwheats. And we have a ton of buckwheats. So rhubarb is also in this family. This is all the native rhubarbs. Bunch of little spiky things, little tiny things. All the Eriogonums are the true buckwheat. So we've got a bunch of these, a bunch of different species all over at every elevation in the mountains. Probably this is the most famous one, Eriogonum inflatum, which is desert trumpet. This one I see on the other side of the Pine Valleys, and it's really interesting looking. It looks like a bunch of literally polygons, right? 6 5-sided sides. So it's really pretty, and it's a bigger shrub. More Eriogonums. So you can see how many we've got. And then Polygonum. Mostly weedy species down here, but there are some native species up on the mountain. Portulacaceae, again, bunch of pretty little things, but small. If you haven't seen miner's lettuce, you probably ought to take a look at it. It is edible, and it does taste good. It tastes kind of like, it's a little sweet, like peas, like if you eat peas in the pod. It's kind of sweet like that. That's kind of what it tastes like. And it's small. It's a low-growing plant, but it's only in wet areas, where it stays moist and cool under the cover of other things. Lewisia gets pretty good size. Again, plant's only about that big around, but the flowers get really big, and it covers itself in flowers at the mid-elevations. Primulaceae, hello.
You're about at time, but you can keep going.
I'm not done. We're almost there. What do we want to do?
Go! Keep going.
Okay, if you have to leave or you want to leave, feel free. Are we okay sticking around for a little bit? Okay, so I'll stick around. I'll finish up. If anybody wants to go, feel free to go. All right, so Androsace, dodecatheon, these are the shooting stars. So we have a bunch of these up there, all really pretty, but they only get about that tall and a really thin stem. All the leaves are down at the bottom, and they have lots of little flowers hanging down, and all the petals are reflexed. So all these things right here are the male reproductive parts, and that's the female reproductive part. So they actually show all the color, but get it out of the way. So bees and pollinators can come in and do their thing. Pyralaceae, little small things, really pretty, but again, small. Some of these where I can, I've found pictures to show you the detail of what's in these things. And you can see these are the male parts and that's the female part. And some of them are just really showy, right? And the reason that these dicots tend to be more successful, apparently, and some of the monocots, is that they've expended all the energy to make this, right? They've put all the energy over time into these bright, beautiful colors so pollinators will come pollinate them. So there is a competition out there for pollinators, just like any other competition. If you put out the brightest, beautiful colors, and you can supplement it with some sugary solution, when they get there, you'll get them coming back, right? You look at grasses. Grasses are the 4th largest family on the planet. They're not showy. They've figured out how to pollinate without expending energy by letting the wind do the work. Here, they've put all their energy, expended all their energy into this. And in the desert, it's really interesting that we have this in the desert because a lot of desert flowers, the little tiny ones, they grow, make the flower, produce the seeds in a 2-week period and die. So it rains, they use the water to do their thing, expend their energy in about 2 weeks and drop the seeds and they're done. So if you're not looking for some of the little stuff in the desert, you're never going to see it because they're here and gone. Ranunculaceae, this is another beautiful family with bigger flowers. Aconitum is poisonous. Just don't eat it. It's not poison to the touch. Actia anemones, you've probably seen some of those. They've been modified for gardening. Aqualegias, the columbines, and clematis. Beautiful stuff, mostly near wet areas. They don't have to be in the water, but moist areas. So if you find any water trickling out of the rocks. What's that?
It looks like a little bit like a trumpet vine.
Trumpet vines in the potato family, but yeah, these are all native. Yeah. And there are lots of hybrids for these for your garden. I'm not a big hybrid fan because once you start crossing things, then you don't know what you have anymore. But I'm a strictist, I'm a biologist, so I don't, Yeah. Well, if most people knew how many GMOs they're actually eating, people who complain about GMOs, if they knew how many GMOs they were getting at the store, even the organic stuff, it's all genetically modified, or it wouldn't be there. That's true. Delphinium's another big one. My name is Del, so I know that they named it after me. But clearly all blues and purples, beautiful things. And then Thalictrum and Myosurus. Ranunculus, this is another big one. Again, very beautiful flowers, but not very big. Some of these things are little tiny things. This one grows all over the place as you go up the road to Browse. Off the side of the road, you'll see it all over the place, but the whole plant is that big and the flowers are about like that. So if you don't get out and look, you're not going to see it. If you're just wandering by or driving through, you'll never see them. Rhamnaceae, this is the buckthorn family, so we have mountain lilacs and buckthorns, and these have modified their flowering to little tiny flowers, but putting them out in big bunches. So the flowers are ridiculously small, but they put out a big bunch of flowers, so it's easy to see for the pollinators, and they also have a really good fragrance. So if you've seen these out, if you just drive up this road, you'll see them off the side of the road, but they're all covered in dust because of people driving by. If you get off the road a little ways, you'll see these, and you can actually smell them. Rosaceae, so this is a family that has a lot of stuff in it that most people don't realize. We have service berries, we have Achillea millefolium. The common names don't come to me. I use the scientific names so often. What is that? Everybody's seen it. No.
And it looks like you're in the Sierra Nevadas there.
Not that one. Yeah, that one is fernbush. Yeah, so that one's in this family, and so it's under the trees most of the time. Sometimes if it's wet, it'll come out from under the shade. Service berries, we've got 2 of those. We've got mountain mahoganies. We've got 3 different species of those. Little tiny leaves, a little bit bigger leaves, and then one that has a birch-like leaf. So we've got mountain mahoganies all over the place. This is blackbrush when it's in flower. Beautiful thing, getting wiped out all over the place. So it's one that I'm a little worried about. Crataegus, wild strawberries, Fallujah's Apache plume.
Yeah, Apache.
So those are all over the place as well. And then a bunch of different species. Potentilla's a really big one. We have a lot of those. Those are mostly shrubby, put a lot of flowers on. But then we have, if you don't know this, you'll know it now, apples, pears, peaches, plums, apricots, you name a fruit that's on the grocery store shelf that you pick up and eat with your hand, it's probably a rose. Raspberries, blueberries, or not blueberries, sorry, raspberries and blackberries I meant. A bunch of things that you eat are in the rose family, okay? And we do have apples up there. They're not native, obviously, but there are orchards from originally. We also have peaches up there. We have the desert almond, which is this one. Desert almond is in the same family with, or same genus with peaches and nectarines and plums and prunes and all of those. We have pears, and then we have all of the bitter brushes.
So is that rock rose in the upper right?
No, that is either antelope bitter brush or cliff rose.
Oh, cliff rose. I said rock.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I meant
Yeah.
to say cliff
Oh,
rose.
okay, yeah.
As in the lodge.
Yeah, that's it. And those things get fairly good size and cover themselves in flowers some years. Some years not as much, but some years, and it'll be interesting too. People want to attach it to climate change or some other thing, but I've seen years when it's as dry as could be and they will flower like crazy, and other years when it's wet and they don't flower. And what you have to realize, one of the mechanisms that plants use for growth and for flowering is stress. So it could be too much water, it could be too dry. When they are stressed, they will flower, produce seeds, and drop them just in case we die, kind of thing, right? So they've evolved this ability that stress, mushrooms do the same thing, right? If you see mushrooms all over your lawn, it may not be that it's too wet. It might be that it's too dry. And so they'll reproduce immediately and then die. So there's a lot of interesting things that organisms do. So here's all the blackberries, the raspberries, all the native roses. So just so you know, this is what a native rose actually looks like. It's not all big and fluffy with multiple petals and showy. It's that right there. And to me, they're more beautiful because nature did that, okay? Nature didn't alter it to make it big and showy. So if you want to see a native rose, if you're out and you're looking at plants and you see 5 petals and hundreds of stamens, those are the male parts, enough that you don't want to count, it's probably a rose. That's what distinguishes the rose family from everything else, okay? Yeah. Rubiaceae, this is the coffee family. We don't have coffee up there. Sorry for those of you who need that. The galliums are bed straws. These are really fun with students too because they got these little hooks all over them, little tiny microscopic hooks. So I can pull this out of the ground and throw it at them and it'll stick to their shirt. So it's like little Velcro. So it's kind of fun because I'll start it and then they'll throw it at each other and kind of have a good time with that. You can actually see the little hook-like hairs on this fruit, but they're all over the leaves. You can kind of see that. But that's a fun plant to mess with. Salicaceae, so this is the willow, cottonwood, aspen group. So this is populus, which includes Populus alba, which is, I think, white poplar, is that what it's called? Aspen, and we have a couple of different, we have Fremont cottonwood, that's the more common one, and then we have black cottonwood, less common, but we have all of those up here. Cottonwoods, by the way, are another one that we're having problems with. I did a project with my students in Zion National Park, and what's happening is that because the deer are so plentiful, okay, I'm going to advocate for hunting here. I think we could solve a lot of the problems with deer in the park if they would just open it up, just close it to everybody except hunters for about 3 weeks, take some of the deer out of there and clean it out, and they wouldn't be destroying the plant life. So the deer, because there's so many of them, are on the riverbeds eating the little cottonwoods when they just saplings, and they're chewing them down to the ground and turning them into shrubs. And we put cages around them to see what would happen, and the cottonwoods only reproduce when they get big enough to do that. So they can't even get big enough when the deer are chewing them down. So what's happening in Zion right now, and could be happening everywhere, is that the deer are chewing them down to the ground, they never get big enough to reproduce, the old ones are falling down, and there's no stabilization on the banks of the river. And so the cottonwoods help hold things together. They provide homes for raccoons and birds and all kinds of other stuff. And so if we allow that to keep happening, it's not going to solve the problem.
It's an ecological problem.
Right, and because there's millions of us in there every year, the predators, the mountain lions, have moved back, right?
And all those deer are inbred,
So-
by the way, so they
That too, yes. They do get inbred, absolutely. Yeah. And here's all the willows. Well, there's many willows, but this is all the willows that are up there. I've put in so you can see willows are also wind pollinated. They don't waste any time making a big pretty flower, right? Some of them have these little fluffy things that look like pussy willows, like this thing down here, right? But they're not pretty. I mean, they're cool looking, but they're not big, beautiful things, so insects aren't interested, so they're wind pollinated. And we have lots of willows, especially where there's water. Santalacea. So Commandra is the only genus we have here. It's a pretty decent sized plant, but you don't run into it very often. Soraceae, we're almost there. Anamopsis. So this is yerba mansa. Grows around the water. Big, beautiful, pretty flowers. Mostly white, but there's a lot of color. So if you look at these right here, the yellow part is the female part and the red part is the male part. And so that whole thing is covered in flowers. And so they're right together and they can reproduce themselves, and they reproduce by these rhizomes. And so when they grow around water, they will spread like crazy. I've done a project for about 13 years now with my classes with the city of Santa Clara. And when we have a flood that comes through, it tears all these out. So if you ever pay attention to paintbrushes, they're not usually growing out in the open. They're usually growing at the base of another shrub where they're attached to the roots. Okay? So they're not full parasites. They're green, but they are partial parasites. And then these are all the monkey flowers. We got a bunch of different monkey flowers up in the Pine Valleys, again, mostly around creeks and streams and wet areas. And then penstemons, we have, I don't know how many penstemons here. I should have counted them, but there's a bunch. Okay? So all different kinds of penstemons from the base of the mountains all the way to the top. A bunch of beautiful things. And then you can see Utah penstemon is this one here. So firecracker is down low, Utah penstemon's a little higher. The firecracker tends to be closed on the end, and Utah penstemon is open. Same color though. And then we've got pedicularis, which is another one of those partial parasites like Castanea, paintbrush. And then most of you have seen verbascum, mullein. Mullein is also, when it's small, before it puts up the stalk, some people refer to it as lamb's ear. By the way, just as a side note, if you're up there without toilet paper, it's pretty good. Works pretty good. So just keep that in mind. Just look for it if you need it. I'm not going to tell you how I know. And all the little tiny veronicas. Cimarubiaceae, this is a nasty plant. It's all over up there. It's all over down here. It's called tree of heaven. It is a nasty invasive. So something that we don't want, but it's really hard to get rid of it. It reproduces under the ground like aspen. So once you have one, you're going to have a whole forest.
It's not a very good name, but is it?
No. What's that?
Is it like a symbiotic?
It looks kind of like that, but it's unrelated, yeah. But it looks a little bit like that. Solanaceae, so this is the potato. So potatoes, all the chili peppers, tobacco, eggplant, all of those things are in this family, okay?
Nightshade?
Nightshades are all in there, yeah. They're all part of that.
So that's the nightshade's below this one.
Well, we have lots of different things that are referred. That's a general name for a lot of members of this. Yeah. So this datura, you've seen that one, right? All over the place by the side of the road. So that's called sacred datura, moonflower. It is one of the nightshades. And it is poisonous, okay? Different levels of poison, not to the touch, to eat. I was actually walking around Dixie Rock, and there was a lady walking along with a kid that couldn't have been any more than 5. He's got one of those big white flowers in its hand, and it's dripping, oozing stuff out the bottom. I stopped her and I said, look, I don't usually like to butt into people's business, but that's very poisonous. She says, oh, he's fine. So I walked away.
Natural selection.
We call those the Darwin Awards.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so the lyciums are all the wolfberries. We have several up there. This one is actually called tomatillo. So it is a native tomatillo, but it only gets a fruit about that big. It's not the what's the word you used earlier? The manipulated ones, whatever the word was. The tampered. It's not the tampered ones you buy in the store. And then the Nicotianas are all the Indian desert tobaccos. Okay, so those are all in there. And then Solanum, this is one of the major groups of nightshades in that family there. We have several of those up there. And Physalis is in that same nightshade group. So, no, it's got the same paper like the tomatillo, but it's not, it's in the nightshade group, but they're all related. How many of you are chili pepper fans, by the way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
When I say chili pepper, are you thinking jalapeno? Or are you thinking all of them?
Well,
Like-
I mean, not ghost pepper.
Like the Carolina Reapers? And,
Yeah, exactly. But I mean from bell pepper all the way up to serrano.
okay. So you know how we measure those for their, quote, heat, right?
Right.
Capsaicin,
Yeah.
right? And they're called Scoville units. A guy by the name of Scoville figured out how to measure it so we can rate their heat. So jalapenos at about 5 to 10,000 Scoville units. And what's the next one up? Probably a habanero is about 200 to, well, jalapenos about 10 to 20,000. Habanero's about 200 to 300,000.
Right.
A ghost pepper is about 1 million.
Really?
And then a Carolina Reaper's at about 1.5 million.
Oh, wow.
And now there is Pepper X. They haven't even named it yet. It's somewhere around 3 million Scoville units. So why do we do that? I do it, and I love it. My face is burning off, and it hurts, but I love it. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I love it.
There's a spurge in Africa that's rated about 1 billion.
Yeah, we're trying to do that with these guys. Yeah, so it's crazy that why would plants do that? Why would they create that stuff in the first place? Yeah, it's a defense mechanism, right? Lots of things that plants produce, even the things that we use for medications, they created as defense mechanisms, okay? And that's one of them. But we're humans, we're stupid, we think we're smart, but how hot can we possibly make it? How much can we make it hurt, right? It's just what we do. So it is what it is. Yeah, but you can get chocolate with pepper in it. And it's good. Okay, Tamaracacea, this is another nasty family that we call salt cedar or Chinese tamarisk, right? So this is almost everywhere up to mid elevations. Anywhere there's water. We've tried to use a moth to come in or a beetle to come in and eat the buds to kill it off, and it's worked a little bit, but not really. So it's pretty nasty.
There's a bird that lives in it now, so if you kill it, you're killing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, it's all invasive, all of it, non-native, yeah. Yeah, and I will, to your point, I will state, as a biologist, we always think we're fixing something and we don't realize what we're screwing up when we, quote, fix it, right? You fix one thing, you're causing other problems. So it is, and we got to be smarter about that kind of stuff because we're not very smart at this point. Ulmaceae, the elm family, also non-native. Elms are non-native. Celtis this is hackberry. So hackberry is native. It's an interesting plant. Urticaceae, this is another painful one. Urtica's all the stinging nettles, and Parietaria's in that same group. Anybody been involved with that before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not fun. I've had students literally, when I was in California, I had a student, and it was hotter part of the year, and then we're all wearing shorts and summer flip-flops, and I said, 15 feet before we got there, okay, that's stinging nettle, we're gonna look at it, leave it alone, and a girl with flip-flops on walks up and goes, you mean this stuff here? I laughed. It's,
Did you say ouch?
it was more than ouch.
By the way, what we have in North America is nothing compared to what's in Europe.
Right.
It is all over Europe. Steve.
There, and there's one, I think it's in Asia, that's deadly.
Really?
It's a tree.
Nettle?
It's a tree that's deadly.
If it touches you.
Yeah. So Valeriana is the only, got a couple of different species here, but again, some of the white flowers don't get recognized, but you know, they're smaller plants with bundles of flowers. You can see the buds in some cases are purpley, but when the flowers open up, they're white. And Verbenaceae is verbenas. So these tend to be smaller things, but again, big bunches of flowers. Violaceae, so if you like violets, this is genus Viola. We have a couple of different species up there. Not big, and usually they like it wetter and moist and shaded areas. Viscaceae, so this is all of the mistletoes and related. So this genus, there are 3 different species of those. One only grows in pines, one only grows in firs, and one only grows in spruces, I think, and then this one only grows in junipers. So they're very specific to which plant they are. They are partial parasites. They are green, so they do photosynthesis, but they also tap into other plants. The other thing that's always confused me about this is that at the end of the year when they hang it up and
Oh, yeah.
why are we kissing for the first time under a parasite?
Yeah.
Doesn't that lead you to believe something with that relationship's going to go south? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to pick a parasite as the thing you're going to kiss under for the first time. That seems to be too leading. It's going to wind up a parasitic relationship. Vitaceae are native grapes. So they're little tiny things, but they're tasty.
Is that where wine comes from?
They're really good. I'm sure you could if you wanted to pick all of those. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're better just to take them off the plant and just kind of pluck them and eat them real quick. They're really tasty and really good. This is what the flowers look like, by the way. So they come in a bunch of different colors, but all the same species. The last family, Zygophyllaceae. So you've seen creosote, right? It is the smell you smell in the desert after the rain.
Yeah.
Okay, aside from the soil, that's the other smell you smell. And there's actually a clone in California that they've discovered that's almost 12,000 years old. So it grows from the middle and it grows out and it dies in the middle. And so if you go up in an airplane, you can actually see rings of creosote that indicate that it's part of a clone. And they've tested this one from end to end and it's the same exact plant, so same individual.
It's pretty amazing to me, there's a lot of plants that do something very simple.
Right, and fungi, same thing.
You know where it is in California?
Lucerne Valley,
Oh, Lucerne Valley?
yeah,
Very eastern end.
yeah. And this one, everybody's favorite, goat head, puncture vine, whatever you want to call it. Same family as creosote, so there it is, and you can see what those look like. People who whine and complain about stepping on Legos have never stepped on one of these. Legos are a cakewalk compared to this.
Why does creosote release that smell in the rain?
The why questions are always hard because of evolution. We don't really know why. I think it's just because it's wet, but it's that it produces, if you pull the leaves off even when it's not raining and you wad them up, you can smell that. So it must just be because it gets wet, and maybe it's when it gets wet and then the sun comes out afterwards, it kind of heats up the volatile compounds. But most plants that produce volatile compounds are trying to scare something away or invite something in, either way. So that would be my best guess. So that is it, folks. Sorry to run over, but I knew we were headed there. I should also real quickly, I've been, like I said last time, I've been doing this for years, putting this together, and my wife has tolerated my mental absence during the long nights of putting this together, so I want to appreciate her for her tolerance of me. So I'm very OCG, and so I get grumpy when things aren't. It's OCG, it's not D. It's a gift. It is. What? It should be obsessive slob disorder, not obsessive organized disorder. So anyway, so I appreciate her for doing that.